All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Kelly Telly. If you're just joining us, this is the platform I will be posting educational videos on while everyone is going through this COVID-19 self-isolation. To make sure that the learning still continues, because I know everyone would be very sad if they couldn't have their science class. So, jumping straight into it, today we're going to be talking about acid reactions in digestion. So just to do a little recap before we get started. What is an acid? What is a base? What is pH? And also what is the reaction between an acid and a base? So an acid is anything that produces H plus or hydrogen ions in solution. And a base is anything that releases OH minus or hydroxide ions in solution. Um, these two solutions are opposites to one another. So an acid is a very high amount of hydrogen ions, and a base is a very high amount of hydroxide ions. The opposite is also true. So an acid has a very low amount of hydroxide ions, and a base has a very low amount of hydrogen ions. Now, um, the acids and bases are measured on a scale referred to as pH. We've gone over that before. pH is a scale from 1 to 14, acids being lower on the scale between 1 to 6, and bases being higher on the scale between 8 to 14. Anything that has a pH of 7, if you remember, is water, and that is neutral. We call anything that has a pH of 7 neutral. Moving on from that, a reaction between an acid and a base is what we call a neutralization reaction. An acid and a base added together produce what is known as a neutral solution. So the acid cancels out the base and leaves us with a neutral solution if they are of equivalent pHs. What do I mean by that? Is that an acid will neutralize, a weak acid will neutralize a weak base, and a strong acid will neutralize a strong base. Now, leading into what we're talking about today, acid reactions in digestion. Well, in digestion, there are a lot of reactions taking place. We'll talk about that in a moment. But one that we've already spoken about in class, particularly when it comes to pH, is this little example I have over here. This image is it shows two Alka-Seltzer tablets, or it could be any sort of thing, an antacid basically that helps your tummy feel better if it's not feeling too well. And the way that works is the reason your stomach is probably not feeling too well is because there's a little bit too much acid. So you can get it when you have what's called acid reflux, and you get that when you've had maybe some spicy food or too much acidic food. And it can cause your stomach to get a little bit too acidic. So these tablets are dissolved in water, or there is a liquid form that you can take, and basically you drink that, and it ends up neutralizing the acid in the stomach, not fully, but enough to reduce the pain caused from the acid reflux, which is when you do that little burp and maybe some stomach acid comes up into your mouth, which is not nice. Okay, so that's a little bit of an introduction there. Now we're going to jump into the new content that we haven't really spoken about before. So let's just talk a little bit first about digestion. So digestion is one of the body system. The digestive system is one of the body systems that you probably already know about. I mean, you definitely use it every single day. The digestive system's main use is to help get energy from the food that we eat, and also to release any waste from that process as well. So it really ranges from, we've got up here the teeth and the tongue, the saliva, to the esophagus, to the stomach, and then we've got the intestines here, and we have a few other organs there that help us to go through this process we like to call digestion. Now, there are two types of digestion. We've got physical and we've got chemical. Now, the physical type of digestion is the teeth and and anything that we use to like physically grind down that. So we have our teeth, our tongue. When it goes down our esophagus, it's squished together to try and help us to get it into into again to break down that food as much as we can. So that's obviously why we chew our food. Um, then on the other side, we have chemical digestion. And chemical digestion is actually, it involves the gastric juices. So what I mean by that is your stomach acid, saliva, things like that, that help to break it down via chemical reactions. And of course, you know that the topic we're talking about at the moment in class is the chemical world. So we are going to focus on the chemical digestion there. So, what is chemical digestion? I hope I'm not going too fast. I'll try to slow it down a little bit. Chemical digestion is the process that breaks down large molecules in food into smaller ones that can be absorbed by the body. Okay, so chemical digestion is the process that breaks down large molecules in food into smaller ones that can be absorbed by the body. Now, what do I mean by processes? I mean reactions, so chemical reactions that help to break down these large molecules. And we're going to go through an example of those ones now. We're going to talk about enzymes, which are the specific things that break it down. Let's have a look. So, when we're digesting things, if you pretend that this is some starch from the food you eat, so starchy foods, potatoes, anything like that, your body needs to break that down into a form that is usable by the body. So it could be a specific molecule like sugar. It could also be even much more complex amino acids that we use. Now, the body, through this process of digestion, it converts these like very complex food molecules that we eat into these simpler molecules that the body can then use to build up into the things that we need to survive, basically. Now we will talk about enzymes and substrates a little bit more, but I just wanted to talk about it quickly to make sure that you understand. So here's a little video. Yeah, okay, it started off early. Okay, here we go. So it's come. The food has come in, and this is the enzyme. This is the substrate. I'll talk about all this again and again just to make sure you understand. But the enzyme takes a substrate, breaks it into smaller parts, and lets it go. So the enzyme is what is involved in the chemical reactions that take place during chemical digestion. An enzyme takes any food that you eat, and in this particular GIF here, it's what we call the substrate. That's a scientific term for something that an enzyme breaks down, but reality is that's just a piece of food. It goes through a chemical reaction on the enzyme and it breaks it down into smaller parts that the body can then use. Okay, so just to go over that one more time to make sure that you understand. The chemical digestion involves these things called enzymes. Okay, these enzymes take the food that we've already broken down through the physical digestion and then help to break it down even further. So when this substrate, which is a piece of food, comes in to the enzyme on its active site, the enzyme breaks it down into smaller components that the body will then use for food. So we have a little bit of information here that will hopefully help you understand a little bit more. I'll just leave this playing. So chemical digestion occurs through many chemical reactions sped up by helper molecules called enzymes. Enzymes are specific. They only break down specific molecules and they only function in certain environments. So what do I mean by all that? Well, enzymes are specific in the fact that there is a specific enzyme for a specific substrate. So, for example, one of the enzymes responsible for breaking down starch is called pepsin. And we're going to talk about that on the next slide as an example, but there's one enzyme for every type of substrate. On top of that, enzymes can only function in certain environments. So this could involve temperature, this could involve pH, So that is why it's crucial to keep your body in a condition that it can perform these digestion, all these other chemical processes properly. So I think it'd probably be easier if we jumped to an example. But again, just take a time to pause the video, maybe wind it back a little bit, listen to what I've said, and you can always ask me some questions a little bit later. Let's continue though. All right. So this complicated uh, rainbow diagram here is pepsin. This is what a scientific rendering of pepsin. So it doesn't actually look like this. This is just what we use to try and understand it a little bit more. Just thought I'd put that up there to give you an idea. Now, pepsin is an example of a digestive enzyme. It's found in our stomach acid, and it helps to break down starch from the food that we eat. Now, so this pepsin is the enzyme, and the substrate, or what we are breaking down, is the starch from the food that we eat. As I said before, that's potatoes. Trying to think of more starchy things. Potatoes are good. It can only function in gastric juices which have a pH close to 1. Now, if your pH in your stomach increased, so it was more basic, that could cause pepsin to not be able to function as well as it should, which can be a problem if you need to break down too much starch. If not, the starch won't be break down, and it'll either be stored as fat or it will be excreted as part of waste from the digestive system. So if we go back here again to our other example, just wait till it restarts. This purple thing here is the enzyme pepsin. For example, this is the substrate starch. The starch comes into the active site of the pepsin, it breaks it down into simpler parts, and then the body uses these two parts to help build other parts of its body it needs for repair, growth, anything like that. So I think that about does it for acid reactions in digestion. I hope you've learnt from that. If you have any suggestions of how I can improve these videos or any questions at all, feel free to ask them. But yeah, if not, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos.